Hello and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool. And boy, do we have a doozy for you today. We know what's going to happen, but you don't. Oh boy.
Yeah.
This is quite a one.
Keep an eye out for the dragon.
Yeah.
It'll be relevant later. But yeah, YouTube was, it's a place for individuals to express themselves. And so now it caters to corporations and censorship.
Well, that's why I really like the YouTube Shorts. It's really hard to do something corporate in a YouTube short. Or they haven't figured it out yet because corporates are...
They'll always sneak in there eventually.
They're like the boys actually kind of showcase it where like they have these like big teams like, oh, what's trending now, what's doing good, and just one person by themselves was like out doing the boys, like the big corporation on social media. It's like we just know people. We don't have to do all these studies and try to figure it out.
Like they're marketing for the boys or something, or
yeah, they're marketing for the superhero group, but yeah, like
the TV show or the marketers.
It's marketers within the TV show. Or
I haven't seen it.
For the superheroes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's like in Lupin how he decides not to post his findings of a massive company's corruption on Twitter. Yeah. Instead, he wants to go on to daytime TV, so he gets a bigger coverage. It's like the biggest back padding thing ever. Yeah. Like, Twitter would have gotten him way more coverage, and he couldn't have been stopped.
Yeah.
But he was stopped, and he was just an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
It was like they were trying to be modern and hip, the creators of the show, but they were actually super out of touch and they had no idea how the modern world works.
Well, I actually they did it okay in The Outsiders. It was like hashtag Outsiders is trending a whole bunch like that. Inwardly, I get the cringe. That is the term. That's very cringe for me. Like those sort of things, like in like they have a TV series or something that's mass produced, like mass media, and then some of their characters are being indie creators. And it's like, oh, look how fast and how well they're doing. Whereas I think Bo Burnham did that show about the movie about that teenage girl, and she's making the YouTube channel, and it's like it is not going anywhere. Like it has like 10 viewers, and our dad's like, hey, you should try doing this. This could help out. It's like so much more grounded than basically any other media thing big groups try to come up with.
I think it also, if I understand you correctly, I think it also depends on where you are. Like, I think I'm not sure who. I'm going to guess Americans, or at least younger people, are much more social media focused. Mm-hmm. Because, for example, I saw a Drew Durnell show. What are they called? What are YouTube videos called?
A video?
Okay.
Short?
I saw a video by Drew Durnell recently where he went on to one of those chat roulette type things.
Yeah.
And he kept meeting people and quizzing them on history.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he would say, is there anything you want to say? And they'd say, follow my Instagram, it's what, so-and-so. Yeah. And these are people from like 12 to, 20, something like that. And every single one of them basically had an Instagram or a YouTube channel or and I mean, we can't throw rocks in glass houses.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that everyone was trying to get a social media presence. Everyone was trying to... because my thought of it was more along the lines of, it's something that someone who wants to... I think everyone wants to create, but it's something that someone who finds it to be their calling or passion would do, rather than it being every person trying to...
It's like having social media presence, just like having Facebook.
But I kind of wonder if maybe people are a lot more... Maybe most people want to be creative and expressive and have people...
look at what they make.
Yeah.
I think that is true.
I think also a lot of people... I think it'd be fair to say a lot of people like seeing numbers go up.
Oh, yeah.
And so just more subscribers on your Instagram, or followers, I guess they're called, or more on your YouTube channel, or more on your... Like, our... like this channel, every time we gain like another 25% viewership, oh boy. I don't know. I'm not viewership, subscribers.
Yeah.
We're always
oh man, we got a subscriber in like a year. Oh, we're going to the big leagues,
Whoa,
boys.
whoa, calm down there. I don't think we got a subscriber in a year.
No, we did.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, it's like
Woo!
it was a month or two ago.
Should break out the champagne.
Actually, oh man.
We'll take out as much champagne as we can pay for with this channel. So here's your cup.
Oh, thank you.
And here's mine.
I remember when we first made it and I first posted, like, I suppose we could do another one if this like one gets 100 views, because then we know people actually want to watch the podcast.
Oh, bless.
Sweet summer child.
Bless your optimism.
Well, I'm curious though, if we'd done this podcast, I mean, so we're the age we are now, but let's say for whatever reason, like, it's 2021 right now.
Yeah.
But let's say we were doing this in like 2011, YouTube was around then?
Yep, YouTube started in 2006.
Okay, so we started doing this even later back, but we're like this age. What sort of reception it got? Because like a consistent show of a podcast around ideas, I think it would have done better just because there was a lot less.
I think the main issue is the length. Mm-hmm. I think that's what turns people off. It's a lot to be invested in.
Yeah.
And then they also see this is a 3-hour episode number 60 or whatever we're at.
Yeah.
And they think, so they do a bit of quick math and they're like, okay, so 60 times 180 hours. So like a week and a half straight of listening to get caught up.
Yeah.
It's too much. I think there's some stuff we could do though. Like, I don't think we have to worry about it, but there's stuff I'll do as a hobby in the future. I think that will probably help it out. Or it doesn't really need help so much as, help's the wrong term, but get it more exposure, I guess would be the term.
I mean, we also don't do the live video so you can see our beautiful faces talking to each other like so many other podcasts do.
Which I prefer because, I don't know about you, but when I edit the Golden Fool, I actually change the order of the narrative to make it flow better.
I used to do that.
And it makes, if there's no faces, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. And
you can also overlay audio and do all sorts of stuff that you can't do with faces.
Although it's kind of interesting, my reasoning for it's twofold reasoning. One is I started editing YouTube videos, and that sort of took away from time because I used to have more, not even time, but it's more like more of the will of editing to edit for the podcast, because you can only put so much time into certain things. But also we just got, I feel, better at being coherent.
I think so.
And so I don't feel as much a need like, oh, I need to delete this, I need to put this here, I need to do that.
I think our structure as a whole is better.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about our dictation. I think...
Our dictation.
I noticed it was 2 or 3 episodes ago. Both of us were saying every third word.
Like totally bodacious, my dude.
It was
awful.
It wasn't. This conversation itself was fine.
Yeah.
And the pacing, which I think is the most important part, me talking, you talking, me talking, instead of talking over each other or not listening to each other. But the skill in... Also, the energy was good. Mm-hmm. Our first 2 or 3 episodes are all over the place. We don't sound engaged in it. And me especially, I sound tired.
Yeah.
And I was very tired. But I'm not sure about our actual dictation quality. Also, our fact-checking has gone way down, which I think has actually contributed to an improving in every other area. Because when you're less concerned about...
Which president said, don't worry, don't confuse me with the facts or something like that?
That was George W. Bush, I think. But what we did in some of the early episodes was we spent a lot of time trying to be pedantically correct. Whereas for conversation's sake, it's better to go and correct yourself later.
Yeah.
Next episode, 2 episodes down the line. Oh, I was wrong about this back then. Even in the moment, you might realize you're wrong, but it's still... I'm not saying you should let the wrong information lie. You shouldn't obsess about nitpicking over every detail as long as the broad strokes are there, would be how I'd put it.
That's fair.
There's something I want to do, actually. I don't know if we can with this setup, and I don't know if it would benefit or not doing it live, but I was looking at our channel recently.
Yeah.
And I was kind of interested in seeing what performed where, and I was wondering if you wanted to look over it, and because I like that sort of thing. I think it's interesting.
I don't want to record doing that.
No?
No.
Okay. Just like it wouldn't be like recording us looking at it. We'd just be talking about it. Like, oh, this did well. This did well.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
Okay. Because I think there's some interesting things there. Yeah. For example, I noticed that our country ball thumbnailed one is one of our best episodes ever, despite it being a relatively new one.
Well, it's in some ways it got a lot of people clicking on it immediately, but its view duration isn't the highest, and a lot of those clicks are from those stupid scanner channels. I had to report a whole bunch of channels actually, but still, it got noticed.
And I think it's interesting to see what people click on. Yeah. Like they click on the very simple art of, and maybe the title helped, The Weirdest War Ever. Yeah. Because you had the war against the gays, which is something that's a bit more like, ooh, what's this? And our channel trailer, I guess it is our most watched video, I think, which makes sense. People come and they see it. And, but yeah, I think there's just some interesting analytics to that sort of thing.
Yeah. I was thinking we could do shorts.
How?
Oh,
you wanted to do something to do with like Evil Corp or something.
Yeah, I wanted to have Evil Corp to be like a door-to-door salesman.
I thought of... The problem with Evil Corp is it's very hard to write, and quotation marks, because you have to reasonably convince someone to do evil. And that is not easy. Yeah. It's fun when you have it, but it's almost more of a spontaneous thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you could do like Evil Corp internship, and it's like, hey, you there. All right, so here's a button, right? If you press it, you'll die, but someone random in the world will get $10,000. Would you press the button?
No.
All right, I'll make it better. Okay. If you press it, you and a random person die, and someone gets $10,000.
No. 2
random people.
No. Not too so. I can think of a way to write Evil Corp script.
I also don't like it scripted. I think it's more interesting.
Well, I'm seeing like a loose
like
script.
A foundation.
Yeah.
Like a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So I read an article recently about meditation, which, unless you had more on Evil Corp.
Nope.
Okay, good. I just realized that I had, like, it seemed linked in my mind, but...
No, I was more just thinking, you even had a pause and then you said so, but I was just thinking, like imagine an arrow, and then just this hard right turn, it's just like, pow! It was like meditation. I'm like, whoa! Got a bit of whiplash there.
So I read this very interesting article on meditation.
Yeah.
Which was released, I don't know when, quite recently, I think. And it wasn't a study, it was a journalist's take on a collection of studies about meditation, focused on the lens of a woman named Megan, who was 25, and she went to a meditation retreat. And so it talks about psychology through the lens of her. She's a real person.
Yeah.
So what happened, to long story short, was she went to this 10-day meditation retreat. And about 7 days in, she started seeing visions of Jesus and Buddha.
Yeah. And
it overwhelmed her and started kind of driving... So before she went to the meditation retreat, she was a fairly ordinary person.
Yeah.
And this is actually quite a sad story, so...
Okay, can I get my funny out then?
Sure.
It starts seeing visions of Jesus and Buddha. I just imagine like her visions are the two of them like shirtless oil wrestling, and it's like the fat Buddha versus Jesus. They're just...
Yeah.
I have no idea why that popped in my head.
Yeah, so she was quite ordinary. She had just broken up with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And she didn't have a job. She was between jobs, but she wanted to...
Whole thing's quite ordinary.
Yeah. She just wanted to do this little meditation retreat before figuring out the rest of her life, basically.
Yeah.
She didn't have any previous history of mental illness or anything. So she went, no schizophrenia. She went to the meditation retreat. And she had these visions of Jesus and Buddha and some brilliant white light. And she started screaming uncontrollably. And one of the people ran over to her and tried to help her. And they brought her to one of the guest rooms. And they asked her... now, before this, I think she had been on a anti-anxiety medication. But she had just come off of it.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be one potential thing, but I don't think it has withdrawal effects, or that would have been similar.
Anti-anxiety medication, depending on, can have some of the worst withdrawal in the world. That's what Jordan Peterson was on. Was
Yeah, but there's a lot of different.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So,
but this was also like 7 or 8 days later.
Yeah.
Anyways, so she started screaming and ranting and raving, and they got a hold of her family and got them to pick her up. And she was crying and she was saying, I messed up, I need to die. And on their way back, on their way driving home, she lunged for the glove compartment where her mom kept a knife at all times and tried to grab that, and they pushed her back into her seat. And then she pulled open the door of the car and tried to jump out, and her sister grabbed her and held her in the car. And she got back home, and they brought her to a psychologist, and they prescribed her all sorts of medicine to calming medication and antipsychotic medication. She basically had a psychotic breakdown.
Yeah.
And they talked to her, and what happened? She said, there was this bright white light, and I was offered to go to heaven. And I said no, and now I'm in hell, and I can't leave. I messed up. And now I've destroyed the whole universe. I've killed the whole universe, and now I'm in hell. And I've put everyone into hell, and I need to fix it. And so she kept going on like this for months. And so one night, her and her sister were in their treehouse, in their parents' house, just sort of like a callback to when they're kids, and her sister had made her tea, and they're sitting there. And her sister's name was Jordan, and she said to Megan, what's going on? What's this? And she said, I messed up. I turned down Jesus and Buddha. Like, what? There's nothing I can do anymore. My life's ruined. I have to kill myself. And her sister said, which I think was really good advice. Her sister said to her, you can change at any moment. Like, even if you messed up, you can change at any moment.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say that I think the sister said something that's fine there. Anyways, the next day, she had finally gotten permission from her dad to go for a walk on her own. And so she took the car out to the park, and they were at home, and they were like, wait, this doesn't seem right. The people at home, and they drove to the park, and by the time they got there was police cars everywhere, and she was dead. Oh. And so that was kind of the intro to this article.
Yeah.
It was quite dark. And so it started going through some studies. So in 2002, there was a study done on meditation where... so there's been studies on meditation since the 70s, I think, or 60s. And they found that you increase your restfulness, you increase your relaxation, you sleep better, you have more energy.
Yeah.
But the methodology for this has always been self-reporting. So you ask the person, like, how do you feel now? How do you feel now? How do you feel now? Yeah. How are you sleeping? Are you sleeping better? Are you sleeping worse? Or do you feel more or less calm? Do you feel... And so this person thought what would be interesting would be to do tests of cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone.
Yeah.
And they also wanted to do tests of neuroactivity in your brain to see how rested and relaxed you actually were.
Yeah.
And they also wanted to monitor the sleep habits of people that did it. So instead of getting them to self-report, you just make the data have a more solid foundation with empirical data. And they also asked a questionnaire. So they said, like, how do you feel? And so they did this, and most of the people reported, as I think it's normally about 70% of people or something, say something like, yeah, I felt more rested, more calm. But when they did all the other studies, they found actually their stress levels had all increased. They were sleeping less, and I don't know if their energy levels were low or not, but I think they were more erratic.
Yeah.
Their I don't know what you call that. Their neuroactivity was more erratic.
Yeah.
So this was in 2002, but she didn't publish it because she talked to other psychologists at the time and said, like, look what I found. And they're like, yeah, well, that's one thing against, a bunch of studies. So could be an outlier, could be. And so I think she said she felt like, sort of going against the narrative, which is...
It's a big problem, actually.
Is it?
Psychology. It's huge.
Really? Because it seems weird that, that's the foundation of science is going against the narrative.
It's even a problem with science, actually, that.
Really?
Which is basically, if you find something that's contradictory...
you're most likely wrong.
Yeah, you're most likely wrong. So if you find something that's contradictory, you're most likely wrong. And so your steps are to go, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Or to do a bigger study on it. and to get other people to do studies on it. Now, if doing a bigger study, it's, oh, you're most likely wrong. We're not going to give you funding for a bigger study. And then other people are like, that's wrong. We're not going to damage our reputation by doing a study that's wrong.
Oh.
And then, or is also just dismissals. Like, no, the scientific language says that this is this. You're an idiot. Get out of here. And it can destroy people's careers.
Weird. Because that's kind of counter to the foundation of the scientific method.
Yeah.
So that is a little strange. I hope that's not how it is in most cases. But anyways, so she didn't feel like publishing it, basically. But there was more studies done over the next 8 years, I think it was.
Yeah.
And eventually she released it in 2010. Well, I mean, it was already out there, but she actually got it peer-reviewed and everything in 2010 and released it. And so more and more studies were done on this. And so some of the stuff... so they talked to like a psychotic expert, for example.
Yeah.
And in this article, they talk about him. And he said he's not actually surprised that meditation could cause problems. Because he said the most common causes of psychotic breaks are sensory deprivation, loneliness, and isolation.
Huh.
And he says meditation is essentially sensory deprivation. They talked to another person who was who'd done a lot of meditation and practitioners and whatnot.
Yeah.
And he said he focused really hard on the letting go part of because it's like, let go of this, let go of that. And he found he couldn't, once he stopped caring about things, he just didn't stop not caring about things. Another person said, I think it was the person who originally did the 2002 study, but I could be remembering wrong. She said she tried out meditation and she was feeling a bit down and she did the meditation and suddenly she felt way better. And she was like, okay, that's a red flag. You shouldn't be able to change your mood that fast just by thinking. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting because that's kind of a selling point of meditation is like refocus, calm. But she said like it's more close akin to like taking it. It's more akin to taking a depressant. So similar to I guess like marijuana or something. Yeah. Because it is a depressant effect you get from meditation. Yeah. So then they were wondering though, like, okay, so meditation can cause problems in people, but is it people that have previous history of problems with mental health, or is it anyone can have problems from meditation? Yeah. And at first they were leaning more towards it's people with mental health histories, bad mental health histories, and it could actually be dangerous for people with bad mental health to meditate without proper guidance and observation. Yeah. But as they went along, they thought that they think now that it can be bad for anyone. And now when I'm saying it can be bad, I should point out another thing was that they think the sort of safe limit sort of thing, which is sounds weird when talking about meditation, but it's like half an hour, no more than half an hour a day. Yeah. Because a certain amount of let's say stabilization or something might not actually be bad for you. Yeah. Even a bit of stress might not be bad for you if it causes stress. But doing it for more than half an hour a day, they think, the article was saying, they think can definitely cause problems.
Well, so I was having some thoughts while you're talking about this, if you're okay with me interjecting.
Yeah.
So with meditation retreats, I have never been 100% fan of the thought of them, like when our dad would talk about them. And
I thought it sounded similar to when he talked about one of the meditation retreats where that woman started crying and talking about Jesus or something. Yeah. Which sounded familiar to this person seeing Buddha and whatnot.
Yeah, but so there's a ritual in a few cultures, it's not really done anymore, of burying yourself alive. Yeah. Or getting buried alive and spending a whole night buried alive. And there's also there's a ritual, I think even in medieval Europe, which is if your father died,
you do a vigil.
And you like spend the whole night with the body. And like both these things, like the vigil and also getting buried alive. There's another one which is you get hunted by all the men of your tribe for like a day and night, and you can't sleep because they'll kill you basically. And they're incredibly stressful, incredibly damaging. It's meant to be like you're a man now, or anyways, they have profound effects on you. And you do those things once, and like only once in your life, and it's a huge life-changing thing. And that's for a day that you're inflicting yourself with insane amounts of stress.
Yeah, I think the meditation retreats are probably day to day less bad,
Yeah.
or less, not less bad. I'm not going to say meditation's bad.
Yeah.
They are less extreme day to day, but they tend to go for like 10 days.
Yeah, but
And that probably is equivalent at that point.
yeah. So the thing is, with a lot of these cultures, European, the tribes, or whatever, burying people alive. So the shamans of like those things or whatever, burying alive, might bury themselves alive like once a year. I don't know. Monks live like take a year of silence. Like priests and religious classes are the most intense people in the world in some ways.
Yeah.
In what they do. And meditation comes from
Buddhism.
It also comes from prayer though. What monks would do, they'd be praying, like spend a day praying to God. And it comes from Buddhism, and also like the Buddhist monks and the monks in Asia are very, very intense people in some ways. And I wonder if like it takes a certain kind of person basically to be able to do meditation for hours upon hours of end.
So there's actually something on that in this article. That doesn't talk about prayer, and I think prayer might be slightly different because you're still focused on the world, whereas Buddhist meditation is the rejection of the world. So I think prayer might actually ground you, whereas meditation would reject everything around you, like the opposite of ground you. I could be wrong though. But what they were talking about was they talked either to or they read about Buddhist monk practices.
Yeah.
And the takeaway there was that meditation isn't for everyone. The Buddhist monks were a very small subset of the society.
Yeah.
Who had rejected life, essentially.
Yeah.
They were trying to transcend humanity. And so meditation was a method to dissociate from the world. And so meditation was not meant to be a stress reliever. It was meant to be a way to, they say hate the world. I don't know if that's quite right, but it was a way to reject the world and its trappings. Like, not care about things. One thing I noticed actually was when I was in Victoria, I read this book on, I think it was meditation. I don't remember. But I followed some of the exercises in there. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I played Ori and the Blind Forest. Yeah. Because a bunch of friends of mine were like, hey, you got to play this. You got to play this. Yeah. And I played it, and it's quite a sad game. And I didn't care at all. I was just kind of like, that's... Yeah. And I was in that state of mind for a couple weeks, maybe a month, of like not feeling happy or sad. And meditation, I think, is intended to achieve that state of dissociation.
Which is very weird, because I guess I've been doing meditation wrong.
Well, that makes me think like Alan Watts, right?
Yeah.
How he describes meditation is very different because...
Well, it's very different even than, his book's not here, but...
Peter Ralston?
Peter Ralston's, which is the main way dads learn to meditate. And that's what he taught us, was Peter Ralston's method.
Which is more focusing on everything around you, I think.
Yeah, remember, like, we'd be in the hot tub, and Dad would say, like, listen to everything around you. Like,
but even then, I seem to remember, I could be wrong here, a lot of, like, let those thoughts go.
Yeah, well, it's notice them and then move on.
Yeah, which is part of what causes the dissociation. And that's part of what caused that guy to have that sort of psychotic breakdown of not caring about anything. That type of method. But it's different, I think, as well, if you're doing it for like 15 minutes in a hot tub once every couple of weeks versus every day for a couple hours.
But even then, like, the way that I have meditated is listening to the world.
And I think not even that letting go and listening, I think more, because I said it in a different episode, but the extrinsic sort of just looking at stuff and enjoying it. Like playing Breath of the Wild, I think, would be a similar experience to what I would call...
meditation.
Not like normal meditation, but a health, like Alan Watts type meditation, let's say. Where what
mindfulness.
No, mindfulness is the exact thing this article was talking about.
Okay, I thought mindfulness was like noticing things, sort of Alan Watts talked about.
It is. But I think more what Alan Watts is talking about than standard mindfulness would be something... Now, I could be wrong here. But I think it's more about flow. Yeah. Doing something that you are so engaged in that you are living every moment of it. Yeah. And not in like a hippie way. I mean, like your brain, all parts of your brain are focused on a single task.
Yeah.
So he says it's only when you're playing music or when you're dancing, I think. Maybe. You do it for the sake of doing it, not to get to the goal.
Yeah.
That's what he calls meditation.
Yeah.
Or he says meditation is one of the few things like that. And so maybe his type of meditation is the mindfulness, and it's the kind that can hurt you. Which could be, because... But basically, the original meditation was not designed to be relaxing, and it was not designed to calm you or anything. It was meant to be something to reject the world and achieve a higher state of mind.
Yeah.
But that higher state of mind isn't necessarily human. And that was kind of the goal. So what happened was there was a lot more... who was it? Who was going to China? Was it the British?
The British were.
Buddhism was finding itself encroached upon by Christianity. So, in an attempt to save Buddhism, a Buddhist monk started teaching meditation to people outside the monastery, and like just to regular people. And I think he was also trying to sell it better. So he was basically saying like, yeah, here's a method you can do to like achieve enlightenment, sort of thing. And so enlightenment is like, ooh, I'm wise and stuff, but it was really about the world is an illusion and it's beneath me and I'm apart from it.
Yeah.
And so they found like something like 40 out of 70 people had some sort of negative effect from meditation at least once on a meditation retreat, or some psychotic-like incident. And that doesn't mean it's like permanent and scarring and lasting. It could be like, I felt really weird for a couple days or something.
Well,
and sorry.
Well, it's interesting again, like the method of meditation versus what I was comparing it to monasteries and even nunneries, is those people aren't rejecting the world, but they're devoting themselves to God. Like nuns don't get married because they're the bride of God. Like they've married them, they love God so much that they'll take no other person. That's like part of the nuns, and monks are like, we're fully devoted to God. And again, those are a very specific type of person. Like there's that whole thing, even in the Asian thing, that's like, I've shaved my family, I'm gonna go shave my head and live with the monks.
Or it could just be that you want to break the cycle of rebirth, and you think you're ready, and you decide to leave behind earthly bonds. It's actually interesting how the Greeks would leave behind the bonds after death, not before death. Whereas the Buddhist, it's about to leave Earth, you have to do it before death, sort of thing.
Yeah, which again makes Zen weird, I think. Just like Buddhism and Zen are actually quite different the more I've looked into it.
Well, Zen Buddhism is, it is sort of Buddhism, but it's not a religion or a philosophy. It's like an anti-philosophy, anti-religion.
Well, sort of a way of even thought in some ways.
Yeah.
No, but it's
that's what philosophy.
Yeah. But like when I think about meditation, I guess, or these sort of things, it's not so much to go like, I reject the world, I'm above it. It's there's a bunch of bad stuff. For a few minutes, I'm going to take that and put away. And there's all this good stuff. I'm just going to let that be. And I'm going to let the world be. And I'm going to be with the world just for a moment and listen to it.
So to me, that sounds kind of messed up. And it could be a matter of, by the time it leaves your mouth and hits my ears, it's a totally different sentence. But why was it messed up to me? Because you are focusing on bad stuff. That's why. You're saying, look at all this bad stuff. And I think that's and maybe that's not what you're actually saying.
No, I'm not saying look at all this bad stuff.
But in order to gather up all the bad stuff and put it away, you have to look at all the bad stuff.
I don't think you need to. I think you can just look at all the good stuff. I don't think you need to look at the bad stuff. I think it's just gone.
So this might be the same thing, but it sounds different to me.
Yeah.
So I think a better way to do something would be to look at the world objectively and honestly.
Yeah.
And that's it. You don't say, oh, look at all this good, or you don't say, let's ignore all this bad. You just say, what, that's a problem? Like you're a monkey on a ball around the sun. whether or not you have troubles, I don't know, talking to your friend. Like it's that sort of, and maybe this is what you're saying, but it's like, look at the truth of the situation. The only difficulties in the world are the ones in your head.
Yeah.
You're making them up. They don't exist. And then, so it's not a time of, I wouldn't say it's a time of meditation. It's it's like you're slightly off course and you just like put yourself back on the railroad sort of thing. Like course correct a little bit and keep going.
Yeah.
Maybe. But, yeah. So with the meditation, what it made me really think about, and it also made me think about our dog who has tracheal collapse right now. And
Something.
yeah. Well, we're pretty sure it's that.
Okay.
And we've gone to the doctor for a few things, and they tend to seem to make it worse, especially going to the vet, because he hates going to the vet in the first place. And even something like being intubated for checking a lump on his side, intubation can cause tracheal collapse.
Yeah.
However, we're pretty sure he had the symptoms of the collapse before he was intubated.
Yeah.
But it still had me thinking that proponents of meditation or keeping a diary or a journal or whatever it might be, pushing yourself to be better, to be enlightened, self-improvement. I think the problem there is pushing yourself, because I think our dog would have been better off if we had done nothing. And I think that with this Megan, if she had done nothing, like her sister, I think, said if she hadn't gone to the retreat, I think she'd still be alive today.
Yeah.
And so I think if something is difficult to do, there's a reason. Like, not if something's difficult. If you really don't want to do something, like you're like, okay, I'll force myself to keep a journal so I can be a better person. Or I'll force myself to meditate for an hour every day so I can be every day I'm going to meditate for a minute more until I'm meditating like 3 hours a day or something. I think there's a reason you have to use willpower to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that you're playing with fire. I think that you should listen to yourself, and you often know what's best for you.
Yeah.
That said, I did make a fairly extreme change in my own life with changing my diet and whatnot, but I don't think that should be a permanent thing I do either. I think it should be... I think there's things that I just need to figure out that I can't eat, like sugar and... well, sugar is actually the main one. Like, everything else seems kind of like not great, but like...
Well, even the idea you said of forcing yourself to do something. So, I haven't started it yet. And it's kind of one of those things like, oh, I'm going to start doing this. But I was thinking, so I've heard that keeping a dream journal lets you remember your dreams a lot more and keep them in mind.
Definitely.
And I like listening to one book, a guy was talking about how he says he pays very close attention to his dreams, because basically they put what's going on in your life into a different perspective. And so he's not like, oh, this means I'm going to get married on the 5th. It's more like, why the heck did I have that as a dream? And he's a psychologist, so think about this a bit. Oh, okay, so that's what that could have meant to me. And I've had a few dreams which have like given me like things to reflect upon, and like, oh, this is what I'm doing? Why do I do that?
Now, I think that the benefit of a dream has already happened. Whether or not you start analyzing it afterwards.
Yeah, well, that's not so much the case why I want to keep the dream journal, is sometimes I have very interesting dreams. And I want to basically have those ideas actually written down so that I can use them later on. Because, I know you don't like people talking about their dreams, because it's very hard to talk about a dream. But recently I had a dream. I don't remember any of the details really anymore. I remember more this morning. But for some reason I was someone else. And it was very distinct to me. As one of the first dreams I actually ever had where I witnessed someone getting straight up murdered. Actually, more of it's coming back to me. But, it doesn't matter who got murdered because they're ambiguous. This is just a figure of authority sort of far figure. And a giant grizzly bear ate them and only left their boots with their feet in them because it's too hard to get their feet out. Which is a very disturbing story from a tiger attack. Anyways, I was like, that was weird. But there was components to this dream which were quite interesting. I kind of want to record them down so that I can tell it better almost.
I think
But I want to do that. It's not like, oh, I have to have a dream journal. Oh, I'm going to like force myself. It's like, that's something I want to do.
But yes, well, I think a lot of people, they want to do this. Like for a while, I wanted to meditate for 10 minutes every day. And I found myself, I started doing it. And as time went by, I found myself missing more and more days, like here and there and here and there. And so sometimes I'd be like, oh, I don't do that anymore. Or when I found this Wim Hof breathing thing, I mean, our dad kept recommending it, so I finally looked it up. And so I started like trying it out. And then I was like, I did it for like twice a day for a couple days. And I was like, yeah, that's something. And then I stopped doing it less and less. And same feeling with the meditation where I do it less and less, where there's a feeling of guilt, where the guilt is like, oh, you're not doing that task that you have. Yeah. Like you haven't done your homework type of thing, but your homework is doing the breathing, or your homework is doing the meditation. And I think that I shouldn't feel guilty in those moments, because I think I have basically, on some level, rejected those things as being useful to myself. Yeah. Because there are other things I do, like sit-ups or push-ups, that I continue to do because I enjoy the results and I am proud of the process. Yeah. Whereas the Wim Hof breathing or the meditation is more like, oh, I have to do this to better myself. And it becomes a chore. It's like it's like going and seeing a relative. Yeah. Like, oh, I have to do this because it's the right thing, but it's actually just a chore.
Yeah. So there's one of Brandon Sanderson's one of the things he wrote, which I think is possibly, again, like he has the Knight's Radiance vow, but it's one of Dalimar's things, which is what's the most important step you can take, and it's always the next one. And there's that, if I should fall, I'll rise again a better man. Like, I'll always take a step forward, and if I go down, then I'll get back up again. And so, for, like, it's weird, because what we're saying is kind of an antithesis? Not antithesis, but, like, with exercise every day, it's, like, for me, it's like, oh, I don't want to do more exercise. And so, like, I stopped doing it for a bit, and I was like, oh, I've gone back into the habit of exercising again. And then it's like, oh, I fall out of the habit, and I get back in again. And each time I get back into it, I get better at doing the exercise, and I can do it again. And it's like, let's try this again. Let's do this again. Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's fine. And I guess it is, I don't know if it's the opposite of what you're saying, but like sometimes I find like I'll fall out of a habit or fall into a bad habit, and that's like, we can do better. Let's try this again. And I don't even think it's willpower for me of like doing those things. It's more like, let's try this again and see if we can just make this a part of life. We're not even part of life, but it's more just, let's try this again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's about right with the positive habits. But with something like the meditation or the Wim Hof breathing or something, I think that self-improvement, self-help type things are self-destructive. I think the only thing that is self-destructive in self-help, well, the only two things, but they're related, are courage and truth. And those you cannot do every day. You can't keep a journal of courage every day. You can't keep a journal of truth every day. What happens is every time you are faced with a situation where you should have spoken up, or every time you're faced with a situation where you should have told the truth or the whole truth, you have to do it.
You're given a choice and you have to do it.
You have to take that extra step. And if you fail, that's fine, as long as you recognize why you failed. And that is the time for some sort of introspection where you go, okay, this is why I failed. Next time I'll do better. And this is how I will do better. But keeping a journal every day, I mean, maybe for some people that works. But especially for me, that is, you're just avoiding the issue. You're just dancing around the issue instead of saying, what do I need to do when I'm in this situation again?
Well, I think you're even looking at, like, what's the reason for keeping a journal, right? So you may have what's the reason do you think for keeping a journal?
Well, I think people that have like anxiety or low motivation sometimes try to keep a journal to keep track of how they're doing and get a grip on how they actually view the world. People with low self-esteem, I imagine, too, are trying to...
Because the journals that I have kept have been thoughts and ideas. It's basically straight up writing. It's like, hey, this is an interesting idea, and I'll write that down. Like,
And I do that too. I write down my interesting ideas, but I do not have a time set aside every day to write down interesting ideas because I'm not.
well, I actually do have a time to set aside to not so much write interesting ideas, but just to write, and it's to help me sleep. And it's a method I found effective, which is like an hour before I have to sleep, or an hour before I want to go to sleep. I write, and I'll write whatever. That's where some of my really weird poems have come from, and some quite silly ideas. And it's basically, I just sort of say, all right, brain, what's going on? And I just let it write whatever's in it, and I put that down.
I think you can do anything as long as it's for the right reason. Stalin. No.
My thought was genocide.
Yeah.
But even that statement, right? You can do anything if it's for the right reason.
Yeah.
Is why people are evil, is because they think it's the right reason.
Right, but the ends do not justify the means ever.
Yeah.
But if you are writing a journal because writing journals helps you sleep, then writing journals are not wrong and are an end in of themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'd be hard pressed to justify genocide. I might be able to do it if I thought about it long enough. I was thinking about morality, actually. And I don't know if... There's a lot of people that talk about morality as being a technology that improves over time. I think I've even said that before.
Yeah.
But I kind of wonder if instead it just changes.
I don't think morality has changed. I think we've gone closer to getting to what it actually is. And I don't know, that might sound a little bit
Suppose...
spiritual or something, but I actually think that there is something that, like, who is it? Is it Plato? He has like that, not so much Plato, but he is like, that's the chair, and that's the chair of chairs.
Yeah, it's Plato.
Yeah. I think that there might actually be something to that is the morality of moralities.
Mm-hmm.
And the evolution of our morality, or the advancement of it, is us moving towards that. I actually think that there is a final end step to morality, even if it's unachievable.
I wonder, though, like, how do we know we're moving towards it? Because at the end of the day, you have to... So Kant, on the fundamental principles of... on the metaphysics of morals,
Yeah.
has a very strong argument towards why all rational beings should try to be good.
Yeah.
But Nietzsche has an even stronger counter-argument, which is that you could do that...
Or you could eat cake.
You could do that, or you couldn't. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And at that point, the whole thing falls apart. There's no reason to think that any of it matters. And I think that's why nihilism is such a strong argument. But I think that...
Okay, but my constant opposition to nihilism, and even some of Nietzsche's teachings, is why do people reject them then? Even if it's the most logical thing ever. Like, it is insane logic, let's just say. Then why is it still rejected?
I think it's the same reason a lot of people might worship God or believe in heaven. It's because they're too afraid to have an alternative. They need meaning.
And then why do they need meaning? Why are they afraid? Like, they're...
Because they have recognized mortality, and it's impossible to accept, so you need to justify it. So I don't know if you're in this camp or not, but I've seen a lot of people talk about how immortality would be horrible because it would just go on forever until the stars burned out and you'd be all alone in an endless empty universe where there's nothing. But that's a description of death.
The only disadvantage that I see to immortality is not getting to know what happens when you die. That's actually my honest opinion on immortality, is the only disadvantage I see to it is not knowing what happens when you die.
Well, imagine being in endless blackness forever.
Yeah.
all you have is a distant memory of when there was something, and now there is nothing. And tomorrow there will be nothing. And a year from now there will be nothing. And 1,000 years from now, you can't even imagine 1,000 years. 10 years from now, that's hard to imagine. There'll be nothing. And it will go on like that forever without change. And like that is a horrifying thought. But I don't think that is any more horrifying than death. I think it's less horrifying. And I think that faced with those two options, you try really hard to believe in a third. Like a place where it all works out. A place where there's a heaven where you get to see your loved ones again, where it's all okay. And I don't know, at some point you have to believe in something, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, any belief at some point might just be founded on nothing but you feeling like it's okay. Like, imagine Jesus comes down from heaven. Again, the return of Jesus. And he says...
Third time.
Yeah, I guess. But the second coming of Christ.
Third coming of Christ. Don't you remember the piece of toast?
Right. The third coming of Christ. And he says, so, me and the old man, big fan of Fortnite. So we decided that's how we're going to run things now. So, last one standing, I don't know, get double heaven. Go at it. And then he just zooms back up into heaven. And morality has, at that point, changed. And now the question... Okay, so... Actually, that's a really interesting question, right? So there was a study done. I think I talked about this before on university students, where they said, if God asked you to kill someone, would you do it? And they found that like 40, or maybe it was 50%.
Yeah, we have talked about this.
50% of men said yes, and only like 10 or 20% of women said yes. And so if Jesus came down and did that and went back up, it's really interesting because who are you going to trust, yourself or Jesus or God?
Well, I think my reply was #not my God.
But I think it's similar to Stephen Fry, where he was asked, okay, you die, you're at heaven, you see God, what do you say? And he said, how dare you?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if Fry would be justified in saying that. There could be reasons that are literally beyond our comprehension for how the universe operates.
I've often thought on this thing with Fry, and there's nothing against the man, but basically he dies, goes to heaven, there's God, and he says, how dare you?
Yeah.
I feel like God would laugh. From what I think of God, I feel like God would laugh and find it immensely amusing, but like not like a haha sucker, but more as like, oh yes, very good. Like, I don't know, like the most kind amusement.
Yeah. But I think that it's interesting that we have the ability to reject God. And I'm not saying like a theoretical God. I mean, if literally you saw this being, your heart was filled with the knowledge this is God.
Yeah.
And like he turned like a toaster into a bouquet of flowers in front of you.
Yeah.
And he said like, this is the new morality. You could say no.
Yeah.
And I think that is, that's really interesting because that is almost more of an argument towards a moral truth.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's something to...
Well, it's even if we made a supercomputer, right? And whatever we asked it, it would answer truthfully. I know Hitchhiker's Guide has a joke about this, which like wants to answer life, death, everything, and answers 42 or something. Anyways, if we made a computer and like we ask it top questions and every time it's the truth, or even we just think like this computer will answer any question we ask it, and the first one we asked it is, what is morality? And if it gave us an answer we disagreed with, then the computer's broken or wrong.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But it is an interesting thought that if morality is, like, you know what's funny? So I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about, to a minor degree, not really, we were talking about something else, but it was kind of, background part of it was a political compass.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, we were talking about, about how people with different political beliefs can have trouble getting along, let's say.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the entire political spectrum today, basically, I think the entire, like, probably without exception, so whether you're, a SJW or a neo-Nazi. I think both of them, and whether you're I don't know what you would even call a massive authoritarian, just an authoritarian, I guess, or a libertarian. Like whether you're there should be no laws or everything should be regulated to the smallest detail type person. Like you're the ultimate dogmatist
or anarchist.
Or anarchist.
Yeah.
In the medieval ages, they burned cats for amusement.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that falls anywhere on the political spectrum. So it's interesting how similar everyone is. And so you look at, like, the United States, where they're talking about how massively polarized they are. Mm. But you don't really see any of them arguing for burning cats anymore.
Yeah.
You see very few of them, very, very few, arguing for slavery even.
Yeah.
And slavery isn't even that controversial of an idea in some ways. Like, it's, I mean, you look at the Romans and the Greeks, and it was a way of paying off debt.
Yeah.
Actually, the United States still does it even. So, I mean, like, their prisoners have to work.
Yeah.
So it's not like we've given up on the idea of slavery. We just call it a prison system now.
You pay for your crimes.
Yeah. So it's not even like we...
And if you fail to pay debt for too long, you go to prison.
Yeah, I don't know if that's quite the same, but it's in line with it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But actually, you have the choice to not pay your debt, though. You will go to prison.
Yeah.
But in slavery... Let's see, why would that be different? Not sure. Maybe you're right. I don't know. You shouldn't go into debt in the first place. But that's what the Greeks had, right? It's like, you shouldn't go into debt in the first place. And the Aztecs, they even had systems for ending slavery. The Romans were so reliant on slavery, they had systems for honoring slaves so that they wouldn't revolt, which is something else altogether.
And the destruction of Rome was because of slavery, almost.
But I think that slavery itself isn't necessarily... It's similar to...
Well, I think it's the Gauls, actually. Might not be the Gauls, but some people in that area had a system, which is if you were captured in war, you had to serve your opponent, and they didn't kill you. You had to serve your opponent for 100 nights and a day. Or sorry, a year and a day, was it? And you became their slave for a year and a day because you were captured.
I think slavery is as controversial as something like...
No, that's Wheel of Time. I'm thinking about. If you caught someone unarmed in that one culture with the people who live in the desert.
I wouldn't be surprised it's based on something.
Yeah.
Given his historical knowledge, Robert Jordan's historical knowledge. But I don't think that slavery is any more controversial idea than monarchy, where the idea itself is actually fairly sound, but the problem with the idea is the potential for abuse is incredibly high.
Yeah.
You're almost certainly... It's almost certainly going to be abused, and the consequences of abuse are untenable.
Yes.
But if the abuse wasn't there, it could be a fine system.
Like communism.
However, because slavery was abused and turned into something that was hereditary, and changed into something where you were captured through no fault of your own, or you were put in a system where you had no chance and you had to steal and then you were made a slave or something. Or in like the case of Qatar, I think it was, until recently, you tried to leave the city without enough money. Then you were basically made a debtor, and then you had to work off your debts for the government, and you had no choice in how you did it.
Yeah.
So you have no power as a slave in almost every slavery system, although that isn't necessarily linked to slavery. And I think in a monarchy, the idea of a monarch is someone who has taken on a burden nobody else wants to take on, and nobody else should be forced to take on. And so they are given every comfort to help them in their difficult job. However, the
comfort and the power become the goal instead of the responsibility that they're supposed to have in the first place.
I read a book recently. What was it? There was like a noble in it, and it's classic in poorly written books, I think, mostly, where but in some good ones too, where the noble is a spoiled brat, and when the peasant like strikes him for being an idiot. No, it was The Life of Sir Brandt, I think, the video game. I had watched a playthrough, which is where they talked about this, where a a noble boy stole a toy from a peasant, and so the peasant boy strikes him.
Yeah.
And then his parents say you need to beat him. But the thing is, the nobility should be held to a higher standard. So I think in a hopefully real-world situation, or in a better written story, the noble boy's father would actually beat the noble boy for, at the very least, stooping to the level of a peasant.
Yeah, well, that's almost, though, a mix of Asian royalty to European. Because, like, what you're saying, like, the noble's father should beat the child because he's, like, going to the level of them. Whereas in its Asians, I don't know if it's the case everywhere, but from what I've read about Korean and Chinese nobility, is this peasant dare to attack God, almost. It's like a different level. And, like, are we getting influenced by that, or is that just our perspective on nobility?
I think that is similar. But I think what you should say in the case of nobility is, we were chosen by God, we should be the example.
Yeah.
We have to live up to God's choice. We are shaming God. Like, even in the Chinese case, I think the father should be like, you are shaming God. He chose you to lead, and look at you.
Yeah.
Like, you're just being a petty bully. And I think that, power is responsibility, and responsibility is power. I think, and...
with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. And I think it is, like, that's exactly it. If you have... I saw something, it was actually Deirdre Nell again, but Switzerland, apparently some women in Switzerland didn't get the vote until 1991, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then Deirdre Nell said, oh, so that's how they managed to stay neutral for so long, which was, he was joking, obviously. Don't want to send all our listeners after him.
Yeah.
But, we talk about it all the time, but the whole Athens system of voters would be landowners because they care about it.
Yeah.
And that came to pass in the States with this last election, where one of the promises of the Democratic Party was a $1,400 stimulus check. So you're buying votes.
The argument against that was people will just vote to get themselves money.
So I don't know who it was, but they said something like, democracy will fail once people realize they can vote to give themselves money.
Was that as either Churchill, which I don't think it was, or Socrates? I think it was Socrates.
But that's the whole argument against democracy, against giving poor people the vote.
Yeah.
And the argument against giving women the vote is they're not going to war. And so that this power is responsibility. Like, you are the ones that fight, therefore you need to, you have the responsibility, therefore you need the power.
That was the exploration of Starship Troopers, is service guaranteeing citizenship. The main character's father didn't want his son to be a citizen because it gives you a vote.
Well, I think, think about being, a leader of a country. It wrecks people.
Well, Trudeau looks old. He was a young guy when he went in. He's been out for 5 years.
Yeah.
He looks old now. Obama
melted. Obama has that famous, comparison where he just looks awful.
I feel like the only
4 years.
There's one person who hasn't changed from appearance. That's because I think he has a personality possibly bigger than what the United States can put on you.
I don't know. I think I've heard basically everyone that comes out of the briefing for presidency in the States comes out shaken.
Yeah, they look beaten.
And that's just the briefing.
Yeah, that's just the briefing.
You come out and they're like, hey, there's an alien base on Mars. The nuclear codes are attached to a pair of dice, and we have to roll them every day. And if we get double sixes, they go off. And
there's lizard men in the basement who we're constantly at war with secret shadow war.
It turns out the Aztecs are right, and your job as president is actually to sacrifice one innocent child a day to keep the world from blowing up. So good luck, buddy. I want to know about the people that do the briefing, though. That sounds like the real power.
Possibly is.
If they're talking to more than one president, it sounds more like they're the real people in charge. President's just there to be a tiebreaker, just we got these options. Okay, that one. The people making the options are the people with the real power. So I was looking at something, someone was talking about the different kinds of tyranny. Why on earth was I watching a video of that? But it was really interesting. So it's basically like, let's say you want your citizens to not grow carrots.
Yeah.
You're a tyrant and you hate carrots. You don't want them to grow carrots.
Yeah.
And so you say to them, you can't grow carrots. That's how you get a revolution.
Carrots are evil.
So what you do is you go to your citizens and you say, all right, all farmers must make a choice. You may either grow beets or watermelon. Carrots are never even thought about. They don't even know they're illegal.
Huh.
You rule without ever showing your hand. And so look at like everything. Do you vote for the left or the right? Should we have a war here or not a war here? Should we, like, when you start looking at it that way, suddenly everything's a sleight of hand to keep away from something else. I mean, that's probably how you start becoming a crazy conspiracy theorist. But yeah. I think there's something, that is how you be a tyrant. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. No, like, actually, what if, though, right? Like, this is also how conspiracy start. But...
Like do you want to be do you vote for the Republicans or the Democrats? And then the poor Libertarian Party's just like, what?
Yeah, well, there's that. But, like, what if there was a council of owls, let's just say, like, equivalent, that ran the United States? And, like, I remember even that Dilbert, they had the joke where they made an online system, and then there's, like, that cabal. It's like, okay, who do we actually want to be president? It was not even so much who we want to be president. It doesn't matter who's president to this cabal.
It really doesn't. You look at the states, they're doing all the same stuff they were under Trump right now.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. But it's like, it doesn't matter who's the president.
Yeah.
And this Council of Owls is just like, people are concerned with left and right, who gets in, who doesn't. We can keep running things, and people think they have the choice.
Well, here's an example I can think of, actually, to some degree, I think. There's arguments like global warming is real, global warming isn't real. Yeah. What about green technology makes you more money?
Yeah.
That isn't the one that's being talked about. And that is the one that... it's irrelevant whether or not global warming is real or not. Yeah. We will run out of oil. We will run out of coal. And there is more jobs and more future in green technology.
Yeah.
Even if... And I mean, nuclear is kind of a weird one because it's not renewable, but it has such high output that it's kind of weird. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know enough about that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's the idea of there's people arguing about stuff that doesn't matter as if it was the most important part of their life. And I'm sure I do it too, because how do you know carrots are banned if they were never mentioned once? It's really, really hard to
figure that out.
But I have noticed that when you're quiet, when people are giving their opinions back and forth, in retrospect, you tend to seem a lot smarter. Because it turns out that both people were hilariously wrong or stupidly wrong.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed before, like I'll be like, it'll be an hour after I've talked to someone. I'm like, oh, I should have mentioned that. That would have showed them sort of thing. Or, oh, I should have mentioned that. Like that would have totally pwned their argument with facts and logic. Mm-hmm. And then like 3 days later, I'll learn something. I'll be like,
good thing I didn't say that.
Good thing I didn't say that. Or even I'll be like, man, neither of us knew what we were talking about.
So... I don't know if you have anything more to add on this, but I thought there's something you wanted to talk about, which is no matter what you say.
Yeah.
Because I've thought about this a lot more and had a discussion with someone about it a bit more, and you missed it last time, so.
Yeah. Want me to open with it then, I guess? Okay. I think that Connor was actually right that women shouldn't be in positions of...
No, not that one. Not that one.
Right. So, last time I got kind of distracted.
We'll talk about that later.
And I wanted to...
actually, though, that thing is important.
Yeah, it's actually tied into this. Yeah. So I got distracted, but progressives, SJWs, I think progressives is better because it's a bit broader. Yeah. And because I think it's such an insidious ideology that there are people I really care about and respect that are falling into it.
Yeah.
And at least to some degree. And so I don't even know what to call it exactly because it's basically a dogma. Like they're becoming religious fanatics. Even just slightly. Like it's sort of like they're flat earthers or they're like creationists. And you're like, okay, they're creationists. I can put up with it, but it's a little weird.
There's a guy who studies diseases. And he recently wrote a book about ideological diseases. And he's saying, like, his field of study is biology and like virology and parasites and that sort of thing. But he like looks at ideologies and he can actually use that and say these are spreading like a disease.
So what I had noticed about progressives was that it doesn't matter nearly as much what you do as it matters what you say.
Yeah.
And I was trying to give examples about how people like Fidel Castro had been exonerated in death, or people like
Mao was.
Yeah, Mao, or Lenin, or I mean, I don't know enough about Lenin to say if he did that much bad or not, but he definitely started something pretty bad.
Yeah.
But you look at people online who say things like, well, let's say they say something awful, like, I think that, like Richard Spencer sort of thing, like, I used to own people like you. Mm-hmm. Like, my family used to own people like you. That's pretty nasty to say.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of person that gets kicked off of Twitter or Facebook or something. I don't know if he has been, but he's the kind of person that does. People like Alex Jones, who have conspiracy theories that are harmful, like, let's say masks are tracking you by the government, are using masks to track you, or the turning the frogs gay sort of thing.
Yeah.
Gets banned off for dangerous conspiracy theories. YouTube is cracking down on conspiracy theories left and right.
Yeah.
But then you have people like the leader of Black Lives Matter, or you have Antifa members who are still on places like Twitter. And I'm just using Twitter because I think it's fairly progressive controlled. So what you see there is an example of their beliefs to a degree.
Yeah.
And they are chasing people off of it for... They aren't getting rid of the people that have actually murdered other people or assaulted other people.
Yeah.
But the people that say things that they don't like are the people that are dangerous and wrong.
Yeah.
You look at Jordan Peterson, who was against a transgender pronouns language bill. Yeah. And he is still vilified like crazy. But there is some petty... Like, I don't think we should know their name. And there's lots of them. But there's some petty murderer out there who beat his wife to death, let's say.
Yeah.
Who was maybe talked about once on the news and we never talk about again. And that person, let's say Jordan Peterson is horrible transphobe and everything he says is to try to destroy the trans community. He's a better person than the person that just beat someone to death. Like, words have become... And the thing is, I think that if Jordan Peterson attacked someone, that would have less... People would care less about that than...
What he said.
You look at someone like J.K. Rowling, on a positive note, where she said... well, she didn't say anything. She liked a tweet which said that... there's a difference... I don't remember exactly, but there's like a difference between biological women and trans women or something. Or it could have even been something...
She was in support of someone who lost her job.
Yeah. She said that this person shouldn't be fired for saying that trans women aren't real women or something.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling has also donated so much money, she's no longer a billionaire.
Yeah. She made one of the best children's novels book ever as well.
Yeah, I don't think that matters as much, though. Mm-hmm. It's something that's more like it's an amazing contribution to humanity.
Yeah.
But I don't think it matters in terms of her being a good person or not.
Yeah, okay.
But I think that starting multiple children's charities and donating a ton of money to charities might actually be something that you can consider being a good person.
Well, I think the ideas of her book are partly about being good people. So
it's hard to quantify those sort of things, though. Like, you could also say that Jordan Peterson's transphobia is the kind of thing that causes trans people to kill themselves.
Yeah, I guess.
But to that, I'd say the only person that kills themselves is themselves.
Yeah.
I'd say that about everything. You have the choice at the end of the day to not kill yourself. And nobody can take that from you or give that to you or anything. Even if it's impossibly hard. But it is your choice. Even if it's impossibly hard to do otherwise, it's still your choice. But I don't know, like the problem is with progressivism is it's so logically inconsistent. and it's so nebulous, and it's so insidious, and it's so scary to speak up against because it's everywhere.
There's also something that really annoys me about it. Annoys may be the wrong word, that I detest.
And it's so morally high groundy as well.
That even moral high ground is part of this thing I detest. So, our culture in North America and the UK, like basically the Western culture, or could say the West, is based off a Christianic belief. And Christianity comes from Christ. It's literally named after him.
Okay.
And Christ's name is Christ the Redeemer.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of forgiveness with a lot of things.
Yeah.
But part of our culture, I think, actually comes from forgiveness, but we've kind of stopped with that.
Keep going.
So people, you say something, right? You say something even 5 years ago, and people get mad at you for saying that. And they're like, I'm sorry I said this. I'm a different person now, but that doesn't matter, and you get destroyed. But isn't the better thing to go, you were a different person then. You're forgiven. Or even if you do, I don't know, there's just a lack of forgiveness, I feel like.
So, tying what you said into what I was going to say, which is it's so insidious and persuasive and moral high groundy, that it's actually very hard to argue against and come up with specifics. But there's a ton of little things all the time, and it would be ridiculous to argue against any one of them. And I think most people would disagree with anyone, but taken as a whole, they're controlling culture. However, what you said, your argument requires understanding of what you are talking about, where you say we're based on a Christian society or something. And I think a lot of people, a lot of environmentalists fall into this, but a lot of people like Sargon and Jordan Peterson fall into this too. And I think you did there as well. Mm-hmm. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But you aren't going to convince anyone with what you just said. Only people... So the only thing that's going to happen...
Well, my point wasn't so much that this is what our society is based on, we should follow it. It's more of I am saying this is what we were, and I'm bemoaning the fact that there is no forgiveness.
Yes, but that you are appealing to Christ in a godless world.
Mm.
And you are making people see you as a religious dogmatist.
Mm.
And what happens there is your argument can be dismissed out of hand because we don't agree with those values anymore. We agree with progressive values of stopping oppression. It was the Christians that oppressed the minorities. It was the Christians who created the schools in Canada and who sexually assaulted children and who did the Crusades. So you are appealing to a flawed institution which will only be viewed in its worst light by basically anyone who isn't a devout Christian. And so what happens is you attract people who don't understand your argument. And I'm not saying that's your fault.
Yeah.
But what happens is, let's say we gained followers.
Yeah.
People who listen to the word of Cameron and Connor, to the Philosopher and the Fool.
Yeah.
What would happen is we would get a bunch of right-wing Christians.
Yeah.
Because they're like, this guy gets it. It's about accepting Christ into your life.
Okay, let's switch that then. Mao's in Book of the Fallen.
I don't think you can appeal... Oh, let's see. Let's see it.
So Mao's in Book of the Fallen. I'm rereading it or re-listening to it.
Yeah.
Anyways, I've heard described as a several thousand word plea to compassion.
Yeah.
And I feel as if I don't know, there's so much, even within the sphere of certain things like everyday life and so much literature and so many ideas on basically every single level, we talk about forgiveness.
But I don't think these people do. I don't think they care about forgiveness. They care about revenge. And that is, revenge doesn't align with forgiveness. Reparations are not a thing of forgiveness. They're a thing of revenge. They don't like, What they don't like is that there's rich white people in charge. They don't not like that there's not black people in charge or something.
That's just really depressing. That revenge is the opposite to forgiveness, and that's what's...
It's a different axiom.
Yeah.
So you cannot argue axioms because they are the foundation of a belief.
Yeah.
So the only thing you can do is...
You basically just showed your point to me better about that thing.
So I think the only thing you can do is show that their worldview doesn't work even when accepted.
Isn't that the cycle of vengeance basically appears, though?
What do you mean?
Well, if your ideology is based on vengeance, then eventually you will find the cycle of vengeance,
right?
Which is the pendulum always swings back.
Right. Yes. But I don't think that is a risk that they're unwilling to take because, well, you just keep pushing for one thing, so it never swings back, in theory. So you're blind to it, I think. But I also think that the idea is that you just have to get it into place and then everything's fine. But I think that in order to go against progressive ideology, you need to show that it doesn't work even when applied consistently to itself, because it is self-destructive by nature. Not just revenge, because I don't like to think that, and I hope that it's not the case that a lot of people are motivated by revenge.
Yeah.
But I have, and when I first heard that idea, I think it was Jordan Peterson actually talked about how when he worked for the NDP, he did it because he really cared about people.
Yeah.
And he noticed that a lot of the people he worked with were doing it because they hated rich people. And I think that there are a lot of good people in like the NDP, let's say, that do it because they care about people.
Yeah.
And so I didn't actually agree with Jordan Peterson, but when something like reparations or something like going after a Twitter mob or going after anyone for anything they've said, the only reason to go after someone for what they've said is revenge.
Yeah.
Because the path to redemption is through teaching, learning. So you would say to J.K. Rowling, your argument is wrong, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the path of redemption, like you said.
Yeah.
You can lead J.K. Rowling to redemption. But if you just say you're a horrible person, then you don't want her to be better.
You don't want to forgive her. You want to keep having your vengeance.
Mm-hmm. And so I think it is actually...
Because as long as you have your vengeance, you are right and they are wrong. And if you're in the right, then you're good.
Yeah. And I think that is something that you'll see a lot of... it happens everywhere. You'll see, like, let's say a left-wing thing, like they're bringing back like segregation at a lot of universities in the States for left-wing purposes or whatever.
Yeah.
It's actually a miracle. Like, little side tangent, but have you noticed that whoever, like the collective left wing, has managed to bring back segregation and gay conversion therapy? Because Zoomers are like 4 times or something more likely to be transgender.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't fit in, therefore I'm transgender sort of thing. Now, there is a fallacy, or not a fallacy, something to be careful of here when I say that. I could be really, really wrong here. Because autism went up hugely from the 70s to the modern day.
Yeah.
That's because our ways of detecting it became way more sensitive.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, cancer went up over the last 10 years.
A different thing, right? Dyslexia, right? So, I will say to someone, I'm dyslexic. And they're like, oh, I am too. And I think about 90% of the time when someone says I am too.
It's like, oh, I have trouble spelling.
And writing.
Yeah.
Or, well, spelling and reading. Or it's like, I've been diagnosed.
You couldn't read until you were 11.
I've been full out diagnosed with something.
You couldn't speak until you were like 9.
Whereas you have trouble spelling.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've had to, like, basically from diagnosis to the end of high school and even into university, I had to work on basically being able to do the basics.
I mean, just look at your YouTube channel. Go to Lorthorn on YouTube, and like, there's spelling mistakes everywhere.
Yes.
And I mean, you can't blame you. Like you didn't learn. You couldn't spell until you couldn't write until you were like 11.
I
Like,
couldn't write my last name until I was like in grade 5.
I mean, I couldn't either.
That's
a doozy. Yeah,
that's a nightmarish last name, but still.
Yeah, but the point stands. Like you have some part of your brain, like the language part of your brain doesn't work in the method that works for most humans.
Yeah.
I don't know if it works poorly or if it works differently, but something's definitely not standard.
But still, on that fact, it's not a where I was going with this.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to be dyslexic. You're not going to be like chased down by a mob because you're dyslexic. I mean, maybe if you write a really bad editorial and like no one can read it. But anyways, and so we know about dyslexia a lot more because it's talked about, because it is a problem. And so people can like, oh, dyslexia, I know about that. And so a lot of people say they're dyslexic. Probably a lot more people say they're dyslexic than there were. And again, with like you said, we can detect it better. I think another part of it is like there's knowledge of and then acceptance of it. I think part of the reason why it's increased as well is probably because people aren't as afraid to be that. And it's easier to do that. So I think that's also a part of it.
So I don't think the Zoomers are necessarily much more different in transgenderism.
Yeah.
I just thought it was fun to say that it's gay conversion therapy. But the other point stands of they've brought back segregation.
Yeah. Well, there's actually other ways, though, that you can view the gay conversion therapy, which is, why aren't you going to date a trans woman?
Actually, have you heard of, what's it called? Munchausen Syndrome? Something like that? Basically, you fake an illness to get attention. Yeah. They found on celebrities or something that...
celebrity children, is it?
Maybe. I think it might just be celebrities. But like that to get attention... No, maybe it wasn't celebrities. Maybe it was just everyone. But there was some finding that people were... like mental disorders like depression and bipolar and whatnot. That is a status symbol. Yes. And so people don't want to just be normal. They want to be interesting and different, and
it's also an excuse.
Knowledgeable about the world and have something to lean on. Yeah. And so the self-diagnosis of things like depression and bipolar and transgender and whatever else. I mean, transgender is probably only self-diagnosable. But
we'll see.
It's going through the roof. And as a status symbol.
What do we like had to... Sorry, that's too much of a tangent.
But yeah, going back to the actions versus words, I would like to give better examples, but it's too what's it called? It's too everywhere. Yeah. And it's too hard.
Pervasive.
Yeah, maybe.
That's the word. It's everywhere.
Profuse.
Yeah, profuse is another way of saying it.
It's too profuse. I think pervasive might actually mean perverse.
Really?
But I'm not sure. I think it might be used to mean profuse, but I think it might not actually mean profuse. But I mean, who cares, really?
Black. Just need to stick with Marcus Aurelius.
But why I know about that is because there's a line in my book which is profuse and pervasive, but not necessarily persuasive. And I had to make sure I got it right, so I had to look at the definition of all those words. But I think it applies to progressivism quite well, actually. But I've noticed that like you can be hated for being a right-winger, but forgiven for being a murderer or a criminal or something. Yeah. And really, anything that you say, how bad is it? Like, okay, you're an idiot, you're wrong, sure. But you're not a monster. Unless you are directly acting towards doing something. Like, if you were trying to get Gina Carano fired, let's say. Yeah. I think you're a lot more of a monster than the person comparing her life to being under attack from the Nazis. Yeah. As hyperbolic as it might be. Mm-hmm. And that's like giving her a, what do you call it? Unfair. Like, I'm not giving her the benefit of the doubt there at all. Yeah. But I think that even if you don't give her the benefit of the doubt, the person that is making light of a tragedy the Jews went through, the person that makes a joke about 9/11, they are better people than the people trying to get someone fired. They're trying to destroy someone's life. The guy that made Night in the Woods, video game,
Yeah.
killed himself because of a hate mob towards him. Night in the Woods is a masterpiece on depression.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously he had it, but if he was able to, like, understand it so well.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say, I don't know what, like, he potentially sexually harassed someone or something, which that's an action. So in that case, sure. But trying to destroy someone, we've gotten, it even feels wrong to say, but our priorities are all out of whack. Sexual harassment is not as bad as trying to get someone to kill themselves.
Yeah.
It's a different level. I think that is the ultimate evil, more so than murder.
Yeah.
Like,
so the high-rise invasion, the mass goal was to get people to despair into committing suicide.
Yeah.
It's like they were weeding out everyone who was weak enough to kill themselves. That's the reason I think they're doing that, because they're trying to find God.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, all these people who will kill themselves when the going gets tough, we don't want them. But like the game people kill themselves is incredibly evil.
It's like, I don't think that, like I said before, the only person that can kill yourself is yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't think that at the end of the day, the act of trying to get someone to kill themselves is worse than murder, because the person has a chance to resist you.
Yeah.
However, the intent,
yeah. The intent
I think, is the most evil thing I can imagine.
You're trying to get someone to destroy themselves.
Yeah. So I don't think the action is more evil than murder, but I think the intent is probably the most evil thing I can imagine.
It's definitely up there.
And I think, like, that's why rape, I think, is so reviled in some ways, because it makes people hate themselves.
Yeah.
It makes people loathe themselves. I don't exactly know why, but it seems to be fairly documented that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I'd be curious, and there's no way to know, and it's not something that we can do. We would need, like, a simulation of Earth. But I'm curious if it's society's fault. Like, if we talked differently about rape, would it be less bad?
Mm.
And not to dismiss rape, but to protect the victims. Like, you haven't lost anything. If that was society's narrative on rape, would the victims fare better?
Well, so I was recently listening to
That's such an awful question to even ask. So I don't.
Jordan Peterson and Weinstein.
Brett Weinstein.
Brett Weinstein, yeah. So they were actually talking about rape.
Yeah.
And we have an evolutionary thing in culture, which is we make a rape so horrible that it won't be done. That is, like, we basically teach people. Like, if you take a person from ground zero and don't give them any culture, it's not evolutionarily in us to revile it as much as that. So part of our culture is the absolute hatred of it. And they're basically, Brett Weinstein was saying that what we need to do is also make war reviled like that, and violence towards other people reviled like that, towards the level of rape, and then that would stop society from doing it.
I mean, rape happens, though.
Yeah.
I don't think, like, soldiers will go to war and they will torture and they will rape and whatnot.
Yeah, well, he talked about that. It's even a behavior happens in war, which is mass rape, which doesn't happen anywhere else, and and only ever happens in war.
But I think that's an argument against the idea of being able to revile war, because when push comes to shove, people don't care about society.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, it just happens.
Mm-hmm.
In what's it in Small Gods, where the like the torturers, they have like world's best dad mugs and whatnot, and it's like the most terrifying thing about society is not the psychopaths and psychotics and whatnot. It's that how little difference they have between ordinary men who just want to get by.
Yeah.
Like, there's and that's why I did the Evil Corp thing, was just to try to get the degrees of, like, you go, but yeah, it's, and I think that because society so reviles rape, it's like
just the accusation of it is a condemnment.
Yeah.
It's if someone had the possibility, like, if there's a smallest possibility that this person did this, then we must destroy them.
But the thing about that is that's very powerful now.
Mhm.
It won't be in the future. And that is actually quite bad because it's getting weak. Like racist used to be a horrible accusation. I have been called racist now. And it's like by at least, 2 or 3 people, let's say.
I think I've only been called racist as a joke, but still even using it as a joke is...
I think as a joke you can say anything. Yeah. But racist used to be a term that was... That's the DEFCON 5 or 1, I don't know which order it goes.
It is DEFCON 5.
Yeah, hit the button and like you've destroyed that person.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a joke or you don't believe them, or like the more someone's called a racist, the less likely I am to believe they are.
Yeah. At
this point. And that's going to happen with rape accusations if they are not... If people keep doing the like, I just...
cried wolf.
Yeah. But I think that because it's so reviled, there's a reason, even if we don't know what it is. Yeah. And so we can't just say it isn't bad. It's kind of like religion. It was made for a reason.
Yeah, you can't take a scalpel to humanity and cut out what bits you don't like.
Yeah.
It's like the most dangerous... It's like, okay, this person has something wrong in them. And we don't know what it is. But we're going to get rid of everything that looks wrong with them. And so they have like a mole, let's say, on them, and you just cut off a piece of flesh, because that could possibly...
Actually, a real-world example is removing your tonsils.
Yeah.
Because, that's infected, let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
But now it's like, wait, we shouldn't in almost every case.
Yeah, tonsils get infected because they're your first line of defense that's saying... All right, this is where all the nasty stuff is gotten rid of and processed.
Yeah. I think that,
it's your little toe, right? Like, what the heck?
Yeah, we don't need that. Let's just cut it off.
And if you lose your little toe, you can't walk. You have to relearn to walk, and it, like, destroys your balance.
I think that what I find is when someone is obviously wrong or crazy, what I've noticed time and time again, and so I'm trying to do better, and I have done better a few times, but it's really hard, actually, surprisingly, even when you're thinking about it at the time. When someone seems blatantly wrong, evil, or stupid, like a flat earther, let's say, or a creationist, or a dogmatic religious person, or a anti-environmentalist, a climate change denier.
Yeah.
What I have found every time is that the reason that they seem so stupid is because I don't know enough.
Yeah.
I am the one that is in knowledge. I'm the one that is lacking information. And I'm not saying they're right or you should believe everything. But a lot of the times, let's say, climate change deniers, for example, they aren't climate change deniers. You're just hearing that as climate change denial because you're so caught up in a mindset that you twist everything they say to be it. But what they really are saying is, I don't want to give up my lifestyle. I don't want to give up my job for the sake of your grand ideals.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can talk to them because there are other ways there.
Yeah.
And someone like a flat earther, I don't know, maybe they don't trust the government's official narrative because they lie so often.
I've...
something like... sorry, you...
I have a perspective, and I think it's good, which is I try to understand why people do things. I don't like looking at the surface of things. I want to look at things deeper. And I get incredibly angry. Like, I snapped at someone recently, and I basically don't let them do this to me anymore, which is dismissal. Because I was talking about an idea, and he said, yeah, whatever. So anyways, and he said, moving on. He will say, moving on. And he says that to dismiss people's ideas. And I just snapped at him and said, don't ever do that to me again. And like, at most I can understand dismissal of things. Like, oh, that's such a ridiculous idea. That's like, I don't even want to, honor it with the thoughts. But I want to explore this idea, let's say. And so I, suggest it. And it's like, no, we're dismissing that. We're moving on from that idea. And it's like, if this idea is so stupid, then tell me why it's so stupid. Don't just dismiss it offhand. And I just sort of have lost the ability to, because he's done it so many times, I recognize it's slightly a problem I have. like, even at times where it's like, it's okay for him to dismiss that one thing, I just, like, get so incredibly angry.
So I used to think that Christianity was very stupid because it was clearly wrong. And I still think that it is clearly wrong as a fundamental truth. Like, I don't think the Bible is literal because it contradicts itself, for one thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense. Even if there is a God, we have no idea what their nature is. Even if a God came down and told us what their nature was, why then do we have a bunch of different religions that are that have different natures of God? Why do the same books have different views on the same God? Why do the same preachers have different views on the same God?
Yeah.
And so it's fairly easy to dismiss religious crazy people. However, the actual teachings, which is what most of them are there for, the actual worship of God is almost secondary. Or it is secondary in most cases, I think. Or not even there at all. They're there for the teachings, and the teachings and their benefits they call God are actually very deep and thousands of years old for a reason, because thousands of the world's wisest people got together and worked on them and made them. And so you need to be humble and realize you don't know everything. And so if you don't understand something, it's probably because you're stupid, not because they're wrong, or not because they're stupid or wrong. And so that kind of leads into social engineering, like creating laws to make people moral.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're doing when you do that.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot dictate. Like, the only country on earth, I think, that might actually know what they're doing slightly is China, because they've been doing it for so long. They might have actually learned a thing or two, but they also have one of the highest, like, body counts. I mean, proportionally, they have the highest.
Yes.
Of killing their own people ever.
Yeah.
And actually, given their population size, they probably also just have not proportionally the highest. Like, they probably just have the highest body count ever of killing their own people. And, it's because they didn't... Actually, proportionally, I guess they probably don't, because it's like, Jonesville, everyone died sort of thing. But numbers-wise, anyways, they are the biggest by far. And they keep having revolutions and they keep getting it wrong. You look at, like, Scotland, now they're making it illegal to say things in your own house. And even if the things that are illegal to say are, like, everyone on earth agrees with every one of them, the fact that law is now in place is a wedge. And now you say, okay, hate speech that leads to violence is wrong. But what leads to violence? Like, and Terry Pratchett wrote, a man wrote about a fun economic theory while visiting a museum. And then 100 years later, several million people died because some dictators didn't get the joke. And it's like, what leads to violence? Should Marx be tried for killing millions? Like, he was just writing a book.
Yeah. That was the thing to do at the time. There were so many books by so many different people all about what system might work.
But it led to violence. So at what point do you say this is violence and this will lead to violence?
Yeah.
And then at that point, when you're saying it's illegal to say things in your own home, you just change the definition of leading to violence or hatred. And now that that's in place, or it might just be trying to pass through government. I don't know if it actually passed. But if it does pass, then, like, I'm pretty sure even in China you can talk to your family how you want. But apparently not in Scotland. Or maybe. Hopefully that doesn't pass.
Great irony that that's going on in Scotland.
The country of freedom.
Yeah.
Like, them and the States, they're both famous for hating the Brits.
Yeah.
And wanting freedom. And, I mean, Scotland, yeah, they've just kind of lost freedom. And they do it to themselves.
People start going to their basements and finding their old claymores. Running about without pants on.
But I would love to give more on actions versus what you say, but I would say just look out for it and you'll start seeing it because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you can't misgender people, but you can punch Nazis. And it's, yeah, I don't know. And the problem with that is, even if you agree with that sort of idea of it's wrong to misgender people, it's okay to punch Nazis because that's how you keep the Nazis down. The problem with that is a lot of people are reactionary, like every person. I don't even think at all. I think every person, when they hear something they will hear it distorted through a lens where they are like, wait, that's wrong, that's stupid. Like you with your friend, you're like, no, that's stupid, that's wrong. Or me with, I don't know, listen back through our thing and I get angry about anything. But sometimes people are discussing an idea and they don't even agree with it. They're just talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, you hear me praise virtues about religion a lot, and I'm not religious. Or you hear
me talk about how
you hear Connor talk about how he thinks women should have first.
No, but sometimes I will take a philosophical stance of so I want to talk about this earlier, but I kind of didn't. But it's appropriate now, I guess, which is with on the regards to immortality. Like, what if each individual, like when you see someone die, that's their death in your world. And we've sort of talked about this, like, you have your thought of, like, your whole life is the span of the raisin. Yeah. But I had different thought.
I love this podcast.
Which is, so you can actually never die. Like, you are actually immortal. Other people can die, but you are immortal. Yeah. And that falls into, I'm the only person that exists in the universe.
Not exactly.
Well, it's a different way of looking at
it. It's totally... because there's no reason that you can't, everyone can't have that.
Yeah, well, I'm saying everyone has that.
Yeah.
It's just so your own, like, you won't die. Yeah. And even though other people are dying around you, you won't die. Yeah. And for them, they won't die, even though everyone else around them has died at some point. And even like an extension of that could be like, I get struck by a lightning bolt and I'm dead. Yeah. Like, declared dead here, and then I wake up in a simulation. I don't die. Yeah. Like, my life is infinite. And that's a philosophical stance.
And possibly a physics one. Mm-hmm. Because if reality is based on observation, and you are the observer, then if you ever stopped observing, then you were never observing, sort of thing. So,
but even taking a step backwards back to you're the only person who exists in the universe, I had a physics class which consisted of a friend of mine, and the teacher was his cousin, and I was arguing the point of being the only person in the universe, and everyone else is like a dream or an idea or like a simulation or robots, basically. And both of them were like really arguing against me, and really like we were having like a good discussion about it, I think. And then they were concerned. It's like, so do you actually believe this? Like, no, I was just arguing it. Because I want to talk about this idea. And I was trying to argue for the point of, logically, from my observation.
And I think even, like, not as a devil's advocate thing. Like, I'm not saying you were doing a devil's advocate. But you don't know, so you want to explore the idea with someone to see if you're right or if it has legs or whatnot. Yeah. Like, when our snowflake episode, that was an idea that talking about it really helped me think about it. Because I just had no idea, and it was something that came to mind. So actually, unless you have a bit more, I have something to...
Even discussing, like today, when we discussed our thoughts about meditation, we were both having troubles figuring out what are the words for...
what's it? Yeah.
Yeah, even that, we're still having troubles now, but just the... Like, we're...
Mindfulness meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. We're, like, discussing it, and I don't know if we've resolved it, but I think we've moved along both in our thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I think I was just more relaying information that I had read.
Yeah. And I was trying to...
And countenance with what you had actually experienced yourself from meditation.
Because, like, I do meditation, but it doesn't seem like I do meditation the way that it is taught.
Well, I think part of it is, it's like saying, man, peanut butter's fine. Like, I don't know what your problem with it is. Yeah. Different people have different reactions to the same thing. And so for me, what I learned is that it's okay for me to say, no, I'm not going to meditate. Yeah. And it's not because I am weak or worse than you. It's because it's bad for me. Yeah. It's not bad for you, but it's bad for me. I'm allergic to meditation.
Yeah. Even then, that works too.
Yeah. And a lot of people, it turns out, might be. Yeah. And it's something worth looking into. And if it works for you, then good. Mm-hmm. I'm glad. Keep it up. But not too much, apparently, because it can get out of hand.
Oh, no, man. It can make it so you can't sleep at night for times.
Well, keep in mind, like, it's a depressive. So, like, you wouldn't smoke marijuana constantly. You wouldn't drink constantly. So
Yeah.
don't meditate constantly.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, also, I was having... There's, in Avatar, right, when Aang to become the full-blown Avatar...
That was exactly what Buddhist meditation was meant to be.
Yeah, so Aang has to lose all connections, and he couldn't give up Katara.
Yeah, he has to give up on the world.
Yeah, he has to give up on the world. But he couldn't lose Katara. And he found what he's looking for a different way, which was through loving her and wanting
acupuncture.
And wanting to look after his friends.
Yeah.
And I had a thought yesterday, which was I have sometimes gone into a state of I don't know what to call. Like I used to call it enlightenment, but I don't think that's the right thing to call it. That's just the only perspective I had on. But it's like overwhelming positivity, overwhelming optimism, and the complete lack of who I am. And it's like, that state's really nice to be in, but I don't like being in it when I'm not in it. I'm afraid to go into it. Even when I'm in it, I have a nagging in my mind that I am no longer myself.
Sounds like mania.
Well, it might even be a small state of mania.
Or hypomania.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't want to lose myself. And so... Psychosis. I leave that state. But sometimes I need to go into it. I don't know why I need to go into it, but sometimes because I want to. I need to go into it because I want to experience what's that like to get a different perspective on the world, but I can't stay in it. And it's like some weird meditation.
Well, yeah, meditation is altered consciousness, and that's what drugs are. Like you're playing with drugs, and that can be fine, but you have to be careful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's basically my takeaway from that article I read, was basically like, treat this like drugs. Like it's not the cure all, and it's not, like one person called it, it has all the benefit, because everyone knows like meditation is the same as drugs. Yeah. But it's often said like meditation is like drugs without any of the side effects, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It is just drugs. Yeah. It has side effects, maybe not a physical dependency, but even then, I don't know. You see these, like when Megan came back from that retreat, she was meditating every day still. Like that would have been, I don't know. I would have, if I was her sister in that case, like Jordan, I don't know if I would have been like, are you sure you want to keep doing this meditation? Like give it a break for a month and see how you feel. Because it brought on your problems. I don't think you should keep it up. Yeah. You know, if taking a month or two off doesn't fix it, go back to it, sure. But this caused your problems, so like, you got to change something. You can't keep doing what you're doing if you're in a state of badness. So I got something I wanted to talk about, if that's all right. Yeah. So it's the clock hand scientist. Yeah. Okay, so imagine a clock, right? Like a school clock, an analog clock. It's got a minute hand and an hour hand. Yeah. And
all schools have them. For some reason, they don't go digital. Maybe so you don't have total perspective of time, and they can be slightly off, but that's okay.
And imagine that the minute hand is sentient, and it's a scientist.
Okay.
Okay, so the scientist is observing the world. And it notices that every time it completes a loop from any point on the clock, the hour hand moves about 1/12 of the distance it did. Yeah. And so it notices that very consistently it passes the hour hand at the same spots around the clock. Different every time, but the same spot. So
it's a repeating pattern.
At like 12:01 or something, it passes it, and then at like 1:02 it passes it, and at
there's 12 different consistent positions it passes it.
Yeah. And so it notices this, and so it says, okay, so my hypothesis is that every time I complete a loop, I cause the hour hand to move forward 1/12 of a loop. Yeah. And so it wants to test this. So using minute hand science, it, instead of taking the normal route it would normally take of taking an hour to go around the clock, it decides it'll run around the clock in like 5 minutes. Yeah. Because, you know, it might be that it's just tied to time. The hour hand isn't tied to it, it's just tied to time. Because you have to eliminate the variables, right?
Yeah.
So it runs around the clock in 10 minutes. And sure enough, the hour hand has moved another 12th of the clock.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's be crazy a little. Like, this won't really prove anything, but it tests my curiosity. I'm going to run counterclockwise and see what happens. And yeah, the hour hand moves back 1/12. And so it tests this, like, let's say 100 times, backwards and forwards, 50 times each. And so
meanwhile, the poor students can't go to lunch.
So the minute hand, and it does it at varying speeds. Like, I'm going to run around in a minute. I'm going to take 2 hours to go around the clock. I'm going to take 4 hours. So the minute hand has very good evidence now that it completing a 360-degree loop causes the hour hand to move 30 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's a scientist. So it's okay. So the cause and effect of the world is when I move 360 degrees, the hour hand moves 30 degrees.
Yeah. 15.
No.
Sorry.
It's 24 hours, but only 12 numbers.
Yeah.
So cause and effect.
Yeah.
That's science. That's how empiricism is done. What it doesn't know about is that there are gears in the clock moving both of them.
Yeah.
And that there is a battery moving the gears. And that there are people putting in the batteries. And that there are... So...
And that the hour hand is a theologist that knows that any time it completes a loop, it gets moved.
So the minute hand has found a cause and effect.
Yeah.
As cause and effect as I release a ball and it falls.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty solid cause and effect too.
Yeah. However, if both the hands did nothing, they would continue to move at a steady rate because of the gears of the clock taking it along. And that is something that it can never see or determine. It can only see the cause and effect of its own actions.
Yeah. And the gears are controlled by the battery as well.
But the universe moves on anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting. Like it's like the Wolfgang Pauli's hidden variables or Carl Jung's synchronicity. Like you can have exact cause and effect in the world that is provable and repeatable and still be totally wrong about it. And at the end of the day, the fascinating thing is that it's not about moving at all. It's about showing what time it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like the clock doesn't even understand that the whole point is about time. It can choose to move left or right or whatever, but it's actually just it's not just, but it is a timekeeping device. It's the whole thing is orchestrated by gears for a purpose that the minute hand doesn't even comprehend.
Yeah.
And so basically, I don't really have a moral there. If you want one, it could be that there's a lot more going on than we can ever determine.
I'm just happy you didn't have some bad pun at the end of all that. I was waiting for it. I have a friend who tells stories like that constantly in our Discord. And it's like, I'm interested in the story. It's like, okay, where is he going? Where is he going? And then it's like the most simple, straightforward pun. And you just don't see it blindsides you. And you're just like, oh, well done.
But no, it's just we will never.
Made me think about the some guys. I don't like the way he talks about it. Like he calls them the fourth dimensional clockwork elves, and they're a bit like your hand coming through thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're a little different, but it's basically there's a fourth dimensional beings that we can't observe, but they can observe us, and it's like us observing a piece of paper with a drawing on it, and they have a massive influence over us as we have a massive influence over two-dimensional things. And it just made me think about that because he said, the piece of paper can't observe us. The clock can't observe the gears. The gears might not be able to observe the battery. And the battery doesn't know that it's powering the clock that's actually the purpose is for us to tell the time.
Mm.
And so, the whole thing's for telling time. And then even we could go to yet another level, which is time is just what we use
to track the sun.
Yeah. And then the sun, our rotation around the earth is just because of gravity.
Yeah, and so it goes back to meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, no matter how much we know, and how much we can... If we could tell you how exactly what would happen from anything in the universe, we would still have no idea about its fundamental nature. It's the...
What if we are moving through a patch of physics right now? Because have you seen the model of the sun flinging along, and it shows all the planets tethered along behind it and their rotation?
No, it's kind of neat.
It's really cool looking. It's basically showing that the sun's actually moving, and the rotation is like sort of relative to the universe. So what if right now, though, we are moving through a patch of physics, and then what if we like leave that nebula or patch of physics and we hit something else, and it's very similar to the one we were just in, but like the kilogram that we had, what if that like changes slightly, and what if gravity changes slightly?
Or what if force doesn't equal mass times acceleration, but force equals...
mass times time.
Yeah.
Like, ew.
No, that's interesting.
But like that could happen. We could actually just be, for quite a while of observation, be in a patch of physics. And I used to have this concept, which is, it's sort of like walking a mile in someone else's shoes. So I'm speaking to you right now in English, and that doesn't matter so much, but I understand what you're saying, you understand what I'm saying. And this almost goes back to you can't die or you're the only person that exists. But what if in your universe, you're a cube, and I'm a chair, and that laptop is who you're talking to. And like, but your actions translate back to me in my universe, so I can understand what you're saying. We can have a conversation. And that lines up with your universe where something entirely different is going on. And then your like best friend's universe, everything's just cotton fluff floating in the wind, and that's just all the interaction it has. But like, it's just like these weird perspective relation thing. And like, we can't observe that. So like, what I observed is this, but I don't know what your observation is.
So I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think it's actually relevant.
Yeah.
You know Theseus's ship?
Yeah.
So he has this ship, right? And
every part he takes it.
Yeah, like every part has been repaired and replaced. And so is it still Theseus's ship?
Except for the diodes down the left side.
That's Marvin.
Yeah.
So there's it's not the answer, but there is an answer to that I thought of, which is that, yes, it is his ship. And because his ship has a soul.
Yeah.
So anything that is the shape of the soul of the ship is his ship.
Yeah.
So, and why that's relevant is because even if I'm talking to this laptop and you are, and a cube and everything, your soul is, I am still talking to a soul, whether it's the laptop or the cube.
Yeah.
And in your universe, you are the shape of that soul. So the soul is the interface through which reality is aligned.
Yeah.
And because everything is subjective, like the idea of that's just a mass of particles versus that's a home versus that's a chair versus that's a tree versus whatever it could be. Like a stump, is it a chair or is it a tree? Like it's, and even that, is a stump the earth or is a stump separate from the earth? Because molecules end and begin only where we say so because it's useful to us.
Yeah.
So everything's soul is relative to the observer. So Theseus' ship has a soul for me, but for you, it could be that the cabin has a soul, but the rest is extra fluff. And that's not Theseus's cabin, or that's not what originally surrounded the cabin or something. And, but I think souls are a very good way to align the universe for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting idea, because if you accept what I said as true, there becomes a problem where Theseus' ship sank, right? Okay. Yeah. Let's say it sank. It sank. Fortunately, half of it was recovered by the Byzantines. They recovered his ship. Okay, that's good. So they rebuilt it. And because Theseus' ship has a soul, and the ship is in the shape of its soul, they align. So that is Theseus' ship.
Yeah.
So the Greeks found half of the ship. It washed up on shore. Yeah. And so they rebuilt it. And because Theseus' ship has a soul, and that ship is the shape of the soul, that is Theseus' ship.
Well,
one day, the Greeks take Theseus' ship to Byzantium to show it off. And they see the Byzantines have Theseus' ship.
So, Pierzanth, has a book.
Piers Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has a book where, as payment for getting out of a dimension, characters pay a nightmare fractions of their soul. So nightmares have a body, but they don't have a soul in his story. And the people who gave the nightmare fractions of their soul, so they gave it a total of like just pieces of it, anyways. They lost some of their soul. They're like, it's okay, souls grow back. The nightmare holds on to these souls because it doesn't give it to the Night Stallion, because she wants to hold on to the souls. And eventually, the fragments she has grow into her own soul, and so there's actually an extra soul in the world from that.
So,
or both ships Theseus' ship.
Well, what I think, like what you're saying as well, I think that a single object can contain multiple souls because how each observer looks at it is different. Like you are the cube soul, but you are also the you soul for yourself.
Yeah.
But you're the cube soul for me.
Yeah.
But one object can contain multiple souls. But I think what's a bigger question is, can one soul have multiple objects?
I think so.
And then that sort of either resolves or raises a lot of questions about transhumanism and uploading yourself into a computer.
Well, even so, we live in country, right?
Yeah.
So
we live in country.
Yeah, we live in a country. We live in Canada.
Yeah.
Australia. Yeah, we live in Australia. Okay. Anyways, so each of us has our own soul as a person.
Yeah.
Let's just go with that. And Australians are the soul of Australia.
Yeah.
So Australia has its own soul, which is its people.
Yeah.
But also each person has its own soul.
Yeah. So it's like souls within souls.
Yeah, and then like humanity in general has a soul, it has a spirit, and every person's a part of that soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
And the interesting thing about something like humanity as a soul is that it's very flexible. Mm-hmm. You can, like Theseus' ship, if you put the mast on backwards, the soul and the object don't align, so it's not Theseus' ship. Yeah. But humanity, you could remove half of humans and you would still have humanity.
Yeah.
So it's much more nebulous. But humanity would exist if you got rid of all humans and then brought them back. The soul would return.
Yeah.
So I think that, let's say there's a big crunch, like the entire universe goes away. And then it comes back later.
Yeah.
And totally different. Everything plays out differently. But like 10 billion eternities later, a nebula crashes into another nebula. And it creates...
a boat.
It creates a boat, yeah. Then that's Theseus' ship.
Yeah.
Even though it has none of even the same... It's not the same universe. It's not the same parts. The soul is the same. But I think that souls might require an observer. Mm-hmm. Because Theseus' ship is only Theseus' ship if people see his ship.
Yeah.
However, a person can observe themselves, in theory.
Yeah.
So if a nebula smashes into another nebula and recreates someone identical to you, and then you have a little panic attack in this 10 infinite futures later, like, am I real? Am I just a copy? Do I have fake memories? Mm-hmm. I think what you could say is that, yeah, I am me because I have the same soul. Mm. Because even though all a human is a collection of particles zipping around in the correct order consistently for a couple years, that is them, and they can observe themselves. Therefore, as long as they are observing themselves, they have their soul. So if you put your mind into a computer, or you go into a teleporter, but then the teleporter forgets to incinerate your body afterwards.
Yeah. You got two of you.
You have two of you, and they are one soul with two people. And that seems wrong because the memories are different. But
well, it diverges from there.
Yeah, but you're still the same soul because you're constantly changing and the soul is allowed to cling to you. Mm-hmm. So you kind of do need to be like a 5-dimensional being reaching out through time, like I said, so that you've just grown a branch.
Yeah.
Like a leaf on one part of a tree and a different part of a tree aren't two different entities.
Yeah.
They're just so far removed it's hard to imagine themselves as the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's weird. It's weird. But like... And so what you could do, I guess, is dismiss the whole thing because it's too complicated and say that Theseus' ship is gone. But then you're acting like you know something, and that's pretty arrogant because you can never see the gears behind the clock, so...
So you just have to go get that sandwich. Try to get a bite before you starve.
No, you'll never starve as long as you're in pursuit of it.
Yeah.
The pursuit itself is nourishment.
Yeah. There's crumbs along the way.
Crumbs lead the way through the dark forest of the staircase.
Well, you have to look out for Tiamat, who's guarding the sandwich.
Rescue your father from the belly of the whale. Yeah. I think what I've noticed... Synchronicity.
Tiamat doesn't need to guard the sandwich.
I've been thinking a lot about synchronicity because I don't understand it at all. But it's the idea that...
There's a great anime with synchronicity in it.
Really?
They like use it as a concept at the beginning.
Oh.
So there's a boat that's going along. And the boat is filled with nitroglycerin.
Yeah.
It has barrels of it. And nitroglycerin is famous for basically detonating if it's too disturbed.
Yeah.
And this boat goes through a horrible storm and lands in shore.
Yeah.
And every single barrel has been vibrating perfectly so that it doesn't explode. And so this, like, I probably gubbling a bit, but that's how they used to explain synchronicity.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in Japan, a boy became the best fighter in the world. And 6 maximum security prisoners throughout the world have all gotten a feeling that they need to go to Japan and try to beat him in a fight.
Yeah, that's synchronicity, yeah.
Yeah, and so each one of them escape their own prison so they can go and try to beat him in their own way.
But so it's a very weird concept because it's not just unlikely things happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's things happening that defy causality.
Yeah.
So you can say an extremely random event defies causality.
Mm-hmm.
I think like a good example, using luck as an example, would be someone who is lucky.
Yeah.
People shouldn't be lucky, but there should be people who are statistically more lucky than others just on chance.
Yeah.
But synchronicity would be saying this guy always rolls 6s. Like that's just how he is. Like I don't get it, but he does. And you could say, well, that's statistically possible. But so that's why I find synchronicity hard, because there's billions of people, so it's always hard to say what's chance and what's beyond chance.
But there is lucky card players. There's people who always like, or even like,
I mean, me with dice, I tend to roll quite well sometimes.
But even like, forget loaded dice, right? But like, I know a lot of time in fantasy they have people playing bones or like a dice rolling game, like even craps.
Yeah.
But it's not even like it's one person's house, the other person is. It's just challenging someone else to a roll. Whoever gets higher wins the money. There will be a guy in your village who will be the lucky one.
Yeah.
He will win the most money. He will always do the best.
Another way to look at it outside of luck is something like you have a dream about a coyote and you never think about coyotes. There's not even coyotes in your area.
Yeah.
Right? You live in some, you live in, let's say, the UK somewhere. You don't even have coyotes.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you look out your window and a coyote runs by. And and it turns out that a coyote escaped the local zoo or something.
Yeah.
And so synchronicity is stuff happening that cannot be explained by anything other than essentially the world giving you a metaphor, or the world and your mind being interlinked on some level that you can't explain with science, because the mind and the world are not two different things.
Yeah.
They're actually the same. So if you think turbulent thoughts, you live in a turbulent world.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you live in a turbulent world, you think turbulent thoughts. So that's why I have troubles with it.
Mm.
But what I have noticed over time is when you pay attention and look for it, the world is a metaphor. Like I walk on a trail and I duck under trees and I think, I keep walking this trail and I have setbacks and I get lost and I have to build a new path and I'm like, and that's my life. Like I have a setback, but eventually I get there. Even the work I did that was in the wrong direction teaches me how to do it better in the right direction. Even then, sometimes I take the wrong direction and I later realize that was the right direction. But that's okay because I now know the path, even if the path is gone. And if the path isn't gone, then I've already laid the groundwork for the next path. And you can do that with everything. Yeah. Like you can be eating and you can be like, it took me some time to make this, but I waited, now it's ready and now I can eat. And this isn't, and you can relate it to anything going on in your life. And so the world is your mind mapped out in front of you and around you. Mm-hmm. And because your mind interprets the world, that means your world, the world is your mind and your mind is the world.
Yeah, your observation is.
And so it's kind of amazing. Like they're the same thing. Like your thoughts create reality, literally, because you create reality. Like reality is yours to create. Like we're all little gods that are looking at our world, and it's I don't know. It's really interesting, and that's what I was thinking about with the DC ship and the clock and whatnot.
Oh, this is what happens if we get past the 2-hour mark in our podcast. I don't know if it's like divulge into, or
no, it's like we've finally done the preamble, so I can actually talk about my notes that I take occasionally.
Yeah.
Never want to get to my notes.
We talk about philosophy.
I just I think about things a lot when I walk. I think, and it's because when I walk, everything reminds me of myself, and myself
So
is everything.
Beautiful.
But like your journey is mapped out in front of you wherever you go.
You're the main character of your own story.
Yeah, but like the story was written by like a pretentious English teacher where everything's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Like you know the whole death of an author thing where like an author.
I thought it was Death of the Salesman.
That's a book.
Oh.
The death of an author is like you have no the author has no right to the meaning of a story. And I agree with it entirely. Like I think a story is entirely what the reader takes from it.
Mm.
And I think that's because how reality works. Like reality is exactly what you take from it. Like this is all a lesson, and it's, go out and learn sort of thing.
Give me a challenge to write a story, which if I'm dead, it no longer works.
I mean, someone could take a lesson from that, right? That alone, that you don't have any control over.
Like some sort of non-fungible token of a story.
You can even write literal commandments in stone, like in the Bible, and people will, in the future, interpret them differently. Like, you can't...
Perhaps not eating pork on the Sabbath is more of a idea of pork is...
Well, when they said that a man should not lie with another man, or that man shall be stoned, what they meant was marijuana stimulates gay marriage, homosexuality. Yes. Like, and that's what Christianity does, actually. That's why it's still around, because it is so adaptable, and they're not afraid to do it. Like, I saw in that book, Can We Be Good Without God? It's amazing. Like, the interpretation of Christianity follows the change in humans' morals. It's not like the same book changes as people change.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating. But yeah, I really...
Like...
Yeah, I don't know.
Moo.
Yeah.
No, that's not, I don't know. That's just nothing.
But I think, like, I don't know. I kind of want to end on something crazy and mystical again, but, like, you can always just cut it shorter. Like, climb the mountain, follow the crumbs, through the trail we go.
Well, actually, I did have the observation that a lot of the time the treasure is guarded by a dragon.
Perfect.
No, that's a metaphorical thing.
No, we stop there.
But I don't think the infinite sandwich needs to be guarded by a dragon. I think the staircase is the dragon. Or the sides are the dragon. I don't know. I just don't think the sandwich needs to be guarded by a dragon. I don't know why.
Was there a dragon?
No.
So we've eliminated the dragon that wasn't there.
Yes.
It's probably good to do.
We've gotten rid of the void dragon.
Yeah. Well, if you get rid of the dragon that isn't there, that's actually quite good, because that means you won't run into it.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with any dragons.
Yeah. There will not be a tiger on my way downstairs to get a snack.
Yep.
Yeah.
Boy, wouldn't synchronicities suck if there was a tiger?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a strong argument. Be good.
If there was a tiger, I don't know what I'd believe in, but I'd start believing in something.
It's amazing how much you can rationalize away, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's bound to happen. There's billions of people, thousands of years. There's going to be a tiger in the middle of winter at some point. Clinging from its earth harness to Australia. All right, we should stop before we just...
Yeah. Go insane.
All right.